talk about an experience that I had at Miss Toya's Creole house. The location is Havenwood, Baltimore, Maryland. Now, before I get into that, I want to just say I'm someone who is a huge advocate for Black-owned businesses. I encourage, I support, so much so that I am a trauma recovery coach, because I know a lot of things truly start with our mental health. So that's something that's very important to me. With that being said, I do want to share an experience that I had at Miss Toya's. This was Sunday, September 27, 2025. My sister and my nephew's birthday. My mom heard some good things about the restaurant, and she wanted to take my sister there to celebrate. We were traveling up to meet at Miss Toya's. My sister drove about 2 hours. My mom, myself, my daughter, we drove about an hour and a half. My mom made reservations for 1 p.m. And when we arrived at 1 p.m., we were told that we had to wait about 10 or 15 minutes, which I did think was a little odd because, you know, we have a reservation, but I said, you know, no worries, all good. We just hung out for a little bit, and about 10 or 15 minutes passed. My nephew, who's my sister's son, he went to check in to see if, you know, our table was ready. And at that time, he was told it would be about another 10 or 15 minutes. So now he's a little frustrated, understandably so, because again, we have reservations. So he says, you know what, I don't know if I'm going to eat here, but it's my mom's birthday. I will still, you know, celebrate, but I don't really like to patronize places that don't simply honor reservations. So at that time, I'm like, nephew, you know, it's all good, it's fine. Let's just give them a chance, because I believe in, you know, having some grace and some understanding, because I know that, you know, there are times where we're limited with our resources. But with that being said, I don't make excuses for poor service, because I think that, you know, that is something that all businesses, that should be the top priority, customer service. Okay. Having said that, it's now about 1:30 and we still hadn't been seen. And I mean, it's extremely packed, you know, at the restaurant. And I also want to say that, you know, one of their policies is, you know, each reservation is only for 2 hours. Okay. So again, our reservation was for 1 p.m. It's now 1:30 p.m. They're telling us about 10 or 15 minutes. We're checking back, and now it's 2 o'clock, and they're still telling us another 10 minutes, another 15 minutes. Now, of course, we're all frustrated, and my mom and I are like, let's just go somewhere else. My sister, she's like, I really want to eat here. It's her birthday, not a problem. Now it's 2:15 for a 1 o'clock reservation. About 2:20, we were finally seated for a 1 o'clock reservation. Now we decide that we want to take advantage of the bottomless brunch for $55 that they heavily promote. The waitress told us that we could only order one thing off of the menu per person. So let's say, for example, if I wanted, I don't know, shrimp and grits and crab legs, I could only pick one thing each round. Now, again, their policy is a 2-hour limit per table, per reservation. So we order one thing per person. Now, we're ordering certain things. Certain things aren't coming out right away. So now we're waiting more. Now it's about 3:30 at this time. And we're still trying to get, you know, things. We're waiting for some things to come out. We did receive some things. By the time, you know, everything was all said and done, it's now about 4:30. Now, again, our reservation was for 1 p.m. The plan was for us to be back on the road and headed to our next destination by about 3:30. I was hoping to be home back in Pennsylvania by 5 p.m. But here we are, 4:30. I'm still at the restaurant for this 1 p.m. Reservation. And I said to my mom jokingly, I don't know if the food was good or if I was just starving from the long wait. but no, the food was good. So I say, I think I should talk to the manager and make her aware of, what occurred. The waitress sends the manager over. The manager comes over. She's like, you wanted to speak with me? I said, well, yeah, I wanted to just, if we could, I just excuse myself from the table, if I could just speak to you about, what occurred here. So she says, well, just give me a minute and I'll come back. I'm like, okay, no problem. The manager then takes 20 minutes to come back to me so I can let her know what has occurred. So now it's 5 o'clock from this 1 p.m. reservation. And I excuse myself from the table and kind of off the floor. And I, let the manager know, listen, the server, she was fine. She did the best that she could with what she had. The food was good, but I do want to let you know, we're here to celebrate 2 birthdays, and we had a 1 p.m. reservation, and we weren't able to be seated until after 2 o'clock. And then we still had to wait for things to come out. So, is there anything that you can do to, compensate for that? And she's immediately, she's like, well, we were really busy. I'm a one-man band here. There's only so much I can do. We can't force people to leave. And I said, well, okay, right. But I thought your policy was there was a 2-hour seating limit per reservation. And she was like, well, I mean, what do you want me to just like throw people out? We can't do that. We can't accommodate for that. Again, I'm only one person. I'm not trying to make excuses here. And I said, well, I get that, but you are making excuses. And I said, and listen, trust me, I get it. I understand, you guys are busy, which is a good problem to have, being busy, but also it's not okay for you to put, your expectations of the customer to understand. It's for you to regulate, as a manager, for you to regulate the time properly. And she's like, well, I mean, you already said the food was good and the service was fine, so I'm not going to be able to, take anything off your bill if that's where you're getting at. Oh, okay. So now you're upset because I'm making you aware of what occurred. And one thing about me, I don't like a lot of, negativity. Again, I'm someone who advocates for Black businesses. I want us to win. I want to see us all do extremely well. However, in part of us doing well, we have to be accountable for things. So I'm coming directly to you. I'm not causing a scene. I'm not being disrespectful. I pull you to the side and I'm making you aware. And instead of you listening to understand and trying to de-escalate a situation, which is also your job as manager, to de-escalate a situation, you're escalating it by taking offense, and now you're taking a hostile tone with me. So now I tell her, okay, well, I don't feel like we should have to pay, the entire bill. I feel like you should compensate that. She then says to me, so what, you're not going to pay the bill? I said, I don't feel like I should have to pay the full bill. Correct. I'm just going to call the police. How do we get here? So you're going to call the police on your customer who is letting you know that she traveled from out of town. The food was good. I'm not going to say the food was nasty. And even if I did say the food was nasty, I'm one person. That's my taste buds. So I don't complain about things like that. I'm talking about the level of service that we received, which was unacceptable. And now you, as the manager, you're taking offense to that. And now you're threatening to call the police on me. So I said, okay. Please call the police then, and I'll just explain it to them. Fine, I'll call the police. I'm calling the police. Now it's becoming a scene that you have created. So my sister says, you know what? We're just going to pay the bill. Don't even worry about it. We'll just pay it. And she says, okay, so you're just going to pay the bill, so I don't need to call the police? My sister said, ma'am, we're just go ahead. It's fine. We're just going to pay the bill, and we're just going to leave. That could have been handled extremely differently. You could have simply took off the gratuity, the 20% that's already added in, because technically, I don't feel like you deserved it. But having the gratuity already plugged in for service that is, subpar, I didn't feel like that was acceptable. You could have at least taken that off and we would have paid the bill. Instead, now you become combative and you threaten to call the police on me. So I go to Instagram, I go to their page, and I leave a review, and I explained what happened. They Miss Toya's Creole house, Haven Road, Baltimore, Maryland. Remove my comment and block me. So if you are only seeing good reviews, it's because this is how they handle poor reviews. I'm not someone that will say, this is why, I don't support Black-owned businesses. No, I don't believe in that. That's why I won't support that business at that location specifically. Now, I'm not asking them to be shut down. I'm not asking for that woman to even lose her job. What I am asking for is accountability. Maybe take some courses, making sure that, customer service is number one, because that's how we have longevity with our Black-owned businesses. That's how we continuously show up in support, because the same way you want to have people show up and support you, and you want to receive those good reviews, well, it has to be beyond just, well, the food was good. Go beyond, support me simply because I'm a Black-owned business, which I want us to win. But come on, we gotta do better. We gotta do better than that. Calling the police, especially in a day and age like we're living in now, you're calling the police because I'm letting you know that I wasn't satisfied with the service that I received because I had a 1 o'clock reservation and I didn't get seated until 2:30. If you don't have someone who's qualified to handle a management position, because again, management is about managing time, managing staff, de-escalating problems as they arise, not escalating problems. So that's my review from Miss Toya's Creole house in Baltimore, Maryland, Haven Road. I would give them 0 stars. I would not recommend anyone to go there until they get their customer service together, until they learn proper time management, until they learn how to de-escalate things properly. We got to do better.